Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
And a wonderful morning it is, and a jolly good morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And in a sea of complexities, as if we haven't got enough to cope with, something called ransomware has hit us. God knows what this is. To find out all about that and a bit more and what we ought not to do is a cybersecurity specialist, Asela Waidyalankara. Good morning to you, Mr. Waidyalankara.
Good morning, Faraz. Good morning, everyone.
And thank you for coming on the program and being here on time, braving the weather and all that.
My pleasure.
What on earth is ransomware?
Well, Faraz, if you don't mind, I'm going to take an unconventional step of asking you a question.
Well, you know, on this program, we do things sometimes unconventionally. Sometimes we ask the guests to introduce themselves and so on. But in this case, even though I ask the questions and you usually provide the answers, I shall agree. Go on then, ask the question. One, okay?
Well, I can't promise you that. As a veteran journalist, I'm sure information is very important to you, yes?
Of course.
And if I were to maybe scour through your laptop, I would find maybe a lot of sensitive information that's important to you.
Well, yes and no, Asela, because, you see, I don't store it all on the laptop. I store it elsewhere.
Excellent. Well, what if one day when you're accessing your machine, you realize all your data is gone? How would you feel?
Awful. I'd feel I'd be as sick as a parrot, I think.
Okay. One more question. What if when you logged into your computer, you saw that somebody has, well, hijacked your data, so to say, and says if you don't pay X amount of money, your data will be gone at the end of the day? How would you feel?
I'd want to use a bazooka, provided I could find the person.
Excellent. So, in a nutshell, that, Faraz, is ransomware.
So where they're holding your computer contents to ransom.
Absolutely.
It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. So ransomware, just to elaborate a little more, ransomware is a type of what we call malware. Now, in layman's terms, I don't want to get too technical, but in layman's term, malware is a program that's doing something it's not supposed to do in a computer system. And ransomware is a variant of malware where basically once it enters into a user's system, it encrypts the data in a format that you cannot decrypt and basically puts a notice up when you log into your machine saying, by the way, your data is all encrypted and we own your data right now. If you don't pay us, well, a certain amount of money, you lose your data end of the day or end of the week or whatever.
But isn't that why we've got things like the police? Can't you call 999 or whatever the number is?
Well, you can, but then again, you're at that point, the crime has been committed.
Yeah.
But this is what we call an instance of cyber extortion or cyber crime. Yes, this is a variant of crime, but can you call the police once a crime occurs? And how much a law enforcement agency can help you once it happens is questionable.
But I mean, the payment of this money, you know, it's surely the police can. How do you follow them? How is the money paid?
Well, interesting. It's paid on a currency called bitcoins. Now, we call bitcoins cryptocurrency.
Right.
Cryptocurrency is a currency that exists in the online space.
It's not controlled by any central bank.
No, it's not tied to a central bank. It's basically a crowdsourced currency.
So there are no monetary law acts and monetary boards and governors of central banks and so on to control this.
I know it's your favorite topic, but no, it isn't.
Right.
It's controlled by a crowd, hence we call it a crowdsourced currency.
Ah.
And basically, this is the currency of choice for cyber criminals because even law enforcement agencies, Western law enforcement agencies, find it very difficult to track down these currencies.
But how do they monetize it into currency that you can use to enjoy everyday life? I mean, surely criminals, that's what the whole idea is, that they're trying to extort money to pay for whatever, from their electricity bills to flashy cars to weapons and all sorts of things.
Well, there are ways to convert it back into normal currency or bullion.
Right.
But, you know, again, that the beauty of bitcoins or cryptocurrencies are that you can't trace it when you convert it back into dollars. Until you do a matter of fact, you can't trace it. So for example, you might actually pay a ransom in bitcoins, but then that's encrypted in a system, and when you convert it back into dollars, virtually that thread is untraceable. The chain of transactions are untraceable until it hits $1.
Even to the best of detectives following money laundering and so on all over the world?
Absolutely, because if I were to digress a little bit towards Bitcoin, but yeah, going off topic, but Bitcoin is designed in such a way that the system itself, it's untraceable. And it basically, the encryption and the methodology used to convert currency to Bitcoins and how Bitcoins transact with each other, it's virtually impossible to trace it.
Right. Back to ransomware. So you turn your machine on. It's all right until you go online.
Yes.
So once your machine's connected to your Wi-Fi, whatever, you get a message saying, "Hey, you got to pay up or else."
Well, yes and no. This particular strain of ransomware called WannaCry, its name is WannaCry. I need to go back perhaps a few months to give you a background and give the viewers a background of how WannaCry came to be and why are we at this particular juncture right now.
Yes, please.
So around March or April, WikiLeaks, I'm sure you're familiar with WikiLeaks, published information of the NSA, the United States National Security Agency. They were using certain cyber tools to hack into individual machines and systems for their espionage activities.
Right.
And all these treasure trove of tools came into light after this WikiLeaks published them. And naturally what happened was there was one particular vulnerability for Windows machines. The code name for that was Eternal Blue. Now this particular vulnerability was picked up by cyber criminals and weaponized. And what happens later on was that this started spreading for the NHS, the UK, and now it has spread to several other countries. The latest statistics are that it spread to about 150 countries as of now. And it started spreading. So what happened was Microsoft, in fact, has given a patch for this particular vulnerability. However, large organizations, SMBs, and even individuals tend sometimes not to update their systems immediately. Now, organizations have different reasons to do that. Sometimes they use legacy, what we call legacy systems, systems that are compatible to earlier versions. So they are a little hesitant to update new patches because they might affect their systems. Individuals sometimes, out of sheer negligence, don't update their systems, and therefore, because of that, this particular type of ransomware has spread now upwards of 100 countries right now, Faraz. And what do you advise a victim to do or not do? Well, not do is, first of all, do not pay the ransom. The reason I say that is, even if you pay the ransom, it's not guaranteed that you will get your data back, because this is basically you're encouraging the criminal, you're making the criminal more bold. So perhaps there are instances now, usually in this particular type of ransomware, they're demanding $300 equivalent bitcoins as payment. But what happens is, even if you do pay, they will just release a part of your data, and they would demand more payment to release maybe another piece of it. So this is where the problem lies, and this is the danger of paying into ransomware, and you're paying criminals. End of the day, the more you pay ransomware, the more lucrative ransomware becomes for cyber criminals, and it's a vicious cycle. So the more ransomware that is out there in the wild. So if we all collectively take a decision, if individuals take collectively a decision not to pay the ransom, not to pay ransomware, have backups, use proper softwares, use antivirus softwares, update your systems, then certainly, I wouldn't say you would stop ransomware, but at least 70%, 80% of the time you would ensure that ransomware doesn't hit your system.
So what happens if your machine, your laptop, your desktop has got extremely sensitive information on it? What happens then?
Well, unfortunately, there are instances. I have actually last year there was an instance where the FBI and US police departments were hit by ransomware attacks, and the information that they contained was so sensitive that they were forced to pay the ransom. Although I just told you not to pay the ransom, they were forced to pay the ransom to stop it from happening and to retrieve their data back, because sometimes for certain people their data is very sensitive and they haven't backed it up. So yes, that's probably the redress you have.
But the best rule is that you must have your data backed up.
Now that's an important statement. When I say you must have your data backed up, I don't mean a cloud service, for example, something like Dropbox, because we've seen at WannaCry that although you updated, maybe backed up your data in a Dropbox, that particular data itself also is encrypted and not accessible.
But that's amazing. That means these hackers, or these, I suppose they're called hackers, right? They have not only identified your machine, but they've also linked your machine to a Dropbox account. And so how on earth have they managed to do all that?
No, we're fairly clever individuals, Faraz. What we mustn't forget is, although these individuals are criminals, these are very, very smart individuals. Usually what happens is these are software engineers or computer programmers, very smart people. But unfortunately, they're using their talents for evil, not for good.
I was going to ask you, what is the profile of the of a hacker? What is the profile of a hacker?
Profile is a very highly intelligent individual who has a very specific set of skills, who is very talented in their specific set of skills, and who makes their services available for the highest bidder. Simple as that. And even for this particular instance, Faraz, although this WannaCry ransomware, the people who have created this have only had $50,000 in their coffers. Usually a ransomware attack earns minimum of about $1 million for its creators. So it's a very lucrative trade to get into if you're trying to be a cyber criminal.
Not the sort of preferred choice of career for most people.
Absolutely not, and it's not advisable as well, because what happens is, although there is a high return, obviously you're on the radars of all of the Western agencies.
And not all heads of state will be as kind and generous as President Sirisena, who forgave that young man who sort of hacked into the presidential website.
Well, if you look at complexity of that attack, actually we discussed this some time back also. That was a very low complexity attack,
right.
Whereas defacing a website or defacing a system, usually what we consider is a low complexity attack. As you can see, something like a WannaCry is a very high complexity attack, because given the thought and the complexity that they've put that into. But something like defacing a website usually carries a political message or gives the impression for cybersecurity experts that this is an attack for just somebody demonstrating their skills, or to, in the case of this young man, he wanted to send a message, and that was that.
Right. But what on earth should? So we should be backing this up, not onto something out there, but into something like a hard drive, and give it to your mother-in-law for safekeeping?
Absolutely. Actually, what we advise is get a portable device that you can store your data in, and actually not be connected to the internet. So actually keep it physically away, perhaps even lock it up for all you know.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way to make sure that your data is secure, because it's not connected. This particular type of ransomware, and this is the elegance of this particular ransomware, that it spreads automatically. So once it infects one machine, it automatically searches within a network. Even if you're not connected to an internet, if it's a private network, it automatically starts looking for a machine of a similar vulnerability, and that's how it spreads. And that is why it has spread so fast, with such a wide footprint.
Do you agree that judging and observing the system in Sri Lanka, that as far as some of our government portals are concerned, that our cybersecurity is rather lacking?
Well, yes, I would say, what is required for us, in fact, is a coordinated policy when it comes to cybersecurity. Encouragingly, yesterday I saw the Minister of Digital Infrastructure made a comment that there was going to be a cybersecurity center in Sri Lanka. So that is encouraging. I must also mention the tireless work that Mr. Laldas and the Asela CERT is doing. But these institutions need to be strengthened, especially Asela CERT.
I don't want to drag you into politics, but you said about a system and so on in place. But is there a commitment, a real commitment to fight this? Because in several other areas we find a profound lack of commitment. But I don't want to drag you into politics. But is there a commitment? Is there a robust system here to fight it?
For us, in my experience, and I deal with a lot of corporates in terms of cybersecurity, and what I found is, yes, there is an interest, there is curiosity, there is fascination, but when it comes to cybersecurity, sometimes they feel that it is just a fairy tale and it is not going to happen. But as cybersecurity experts,
they thought about the same way about the hedging. And when the Cabinet of Ministers decided not to insure the lower end in case the oil prices dropped, they didn't think it's ever going to happen because the oil was going up and up and up. So it's a bit, it's a bit like that, what you're saying here, and it cost us a lot of money.
Absolutely. And this is the danger that we are sitting on, because we've seen many times countries, Western countries, you saw what happened with the NHS.
That was going to be one of my questions. You just usurped me there. What happened there? What do you mean? The National Health System, the NHS, the UK, it's being used even as we speak. It's a 24/7 business. What happened?
Well, surely, Faraz, what happened was the systems were unusable. And actually there was a situation where the OPD patients or people who were supposed to have surgeries even were not able to be given services. Because usually what happens is the NHS, a Western country of that nature, usually has their patients' records on a system. And of course all of their other hospital-related operations are done on a digital system. So imagine when you do not have access to those digital systems, when your servers, your machines are all infected by a particular program asking you for money, it's chaos. Well, answering back to your question about commitment, well, Faraz, right now this country has not suffered a major cyber attack. But we've seen other countries of a similar profile to Sri Lanka, suffer cyber attacks. Encouragingly, the government is taking certain steps. Now we have taken steps to create a cyber center. We have taken steps to create an operations center for cyber security. Certainly there are good steps coming in, but obviously there must be policy decisions. There must be a real effort. There must be a discussion at policy level, at cabinet level, at presidential level to actually bring this issue to light, because in other countries, cybersecurity is being discussed in the same vein as national security, which is the importance it is given.
This is the new national security.
As far as, I'll give you a very good example of how important cyber is right now. The US usually had 3 or 4 military commands, one air, one sea, one land. Well, back in 2012, they created a new division for cyber. So they consider it the new front for warfare. And that's how serious Western countries are treating cyber. If you look at Europol, if you look at Interpol, if you look at all the other agencies, when this attack happened, they were on the ball. They were giving alerts to people, they were informing people, they were telling them how to ensure that your systems are protected. Policy decisions were being made. Certain countries, in fact, repelled attacks. For example, the Russian internal ministry was targeted by WannaCry, and they managed to successfully repel that attack. Can you imagine if one of our critical ministries, perhaps the foreign ministry or the finance ministry or any other ministry, was hit with such an attack? What would be the scale of chaos for this country?
We don't need any cyber attack on the finance ministry, young man, because it's already been hit by something called the central bank bond scandal. But anyway, that's a different story for another day. But really, these people, what can we can't we harness these talents that have gone wrong?
Absolutely, we can.
And do we have any idea of how many attacks this ransomware has made in Sri Lanka?
Well, right now, Faraz, what happens is there have been no reports at the moment.
Or are they not telling us?
Actually, you hit the point on the head. Usually what happens is sometimes, and this is a phenomenon not only for Sri Lanka, certain institutions don't think it's prudent to report the breach because they would suffer brand damage. And unless there is a discussion of a breach to necessary authorities and that information is shared, perhaps in a secure way, to the required entities, we won't know if there is a problem. Because hiding a problem really is not a solution to a problem. Perhaps they have been privately hit, perhaps they're trying to privately, make sure that the situation is taken care of, contained.
Yeah.
But it is not been reported in Sri Lanka. Right now, as it stands, Asela stands firm saying that no Sri Lankan businesses or entities have been affected by it.
Do we have a police division dedicated to cyber crimes?
In fact, I believe the Criminal Investigations Department has a unit dedicated to cybercrime.
Right.
But again, Faraz, it's a matter of training people, it's a matter of tools, it's a matter of exposing these police personnel, investigators to cyber tools, cyber forensics, giving them a different level of training, because there is a skill gap when it comes to detecting cybercrime. And obviously, I think to its credit, not this government as well as previous governments have tried to build people's skills up. But again, to what level is it there? Are we on par with the world? Is a different question.
In Sri Lanka, we have a penchant for blaming somebody for something that's happening now. And we see that in every successive government. One government will say, well, it was the other lot, and this one will say it was the other lot, and the next one will say this lot. Who do we blame? Is there anyone to blame about all these attacks?
We have to blame ourselves, Faraz. Simple as that.
We have to blame ourselves.
Yes.
In more ways than one. Because the March the 12th Declaration says, urges of the people to think before they vote. And so in the same sort of vein, like you advised us earlier, we must learn to religiously almost back up our data and keep it away from online.
Also, you need to update your systems. Look at the timeline, Faraz. By March, Microsoft Corporation, because this particular strain of ransomware affects Windows machines, to their credit, they've done that on March. It's May now. Obviously, individuals, organizations have not updated their systems. And which is why this particular strain of ransomware called WannaCry is spreading at such a high rate.
So I have a question here from a viewer. The Foreign Ministry and Finance Ministry might get hit with a reshuffle than a virus. Is there a cure? Who do we complain to?
It's a bit beyond my scope, but but I will tell you, Faraz, and the problem is, as we go along and as we become more digitized and connected as a nation, we have to, all our systems, government systems, all our data is going to be ending up in the internet. The more we do that, the more vulnerable we become if we do not focus on cybersecurity. Because it's all and good to say, yes, we've digitized A, we've digitized B, now you can do this online, now you can get your X government service online, Y government service online, all good. But the security, if your data is there, and if someone finally decides it's in their financial interest to attack these systems and hold us to ransom, well, that day we will have only ourselves to blame.
And another point, in a call coming through to our control center, is they're asking us, they're asking you actually, quite a number of Sri Lankans don't have authorized versions of the operating system. They're using pirated copies. What can they do?
Very good question. Thank you very much, whoever asked that question. That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
part of the problem that us as Sri Lankans face is we don't like to pay for things, Faraz.
Right.
But the problem is, if you buy pirated software or you buy pirated versions of systems,
Yeah.
there's a very good chance, very high probability that your systems are vulnerable. Look at what happened right now. The moment this vulnerability was discovered, Microsoft patched it and pushed across the updates to all of its users.
Right.
But the key point here is all of its users who had validly purchased the software.
Right.
If you don't purchase it in a valid way, you're exposed and you're vulnerable. And this is what happens. We don't want to invest that upfront cost of paying for that software, but we are ready to maybe prepare to suffer the cost of getting that data breached.
But big corporations like this, like Microsoft and so on, do they have special pricing taking into account the ability to pay of countries in economies like in Sri Lanka? You can't possibly expect a user in Sri Lanka to be able to pay the same amount as a user in the UK or in a different economy.
This would be a sales pitch for Microsoft, but I will clarify. In fact, if you look at the pricing that Microsoft or any other software providers give, they do give concessionally pricing for this particular region, the Southeast Asian region, because cybersecurity experts have identified that Southeast Asian region has the highest amount of counterfeit softwares. So they want to actually make people get into the line of proper paid software, enticing them with low pricing, enticing them with special discounted pricing. I know students get a special pricing scheme from companies like Microsoft for their software. But again, we have to encourage people to pay for their software and have valid software, because that is the way forward. Listen, end of the day, think of it as an insurance policy, because when something happens, at least these companies are held responsible because you have paid for that product. And today you're using a Microsoft or a Windows, and it's a counterfeit. You can't even write to Microsoft and say, here, listen, my system got affected because, there wasn't any patch.
Yeah.
Because they'll get back to you and say, well, sorry, chum, you're using a counterfeit software.
How sure are we when we go and buy a machine and pay for the software and they charge us the 20,000 or whatever it is extra for the non-counterfeit or the original software? How sure are we that these guys out there in the retail side have actually given us an original software?
Well, in terms of if you're buying an operating system, obviously you can check back with the manufacturer. There are serial keys, there are ways that you can check back.
Right.
And there are mechanisms to ensure that this is in fact paid, proper, validated software.
Couple of questions coming in from various viewers, just as we are in the last minute. One viewer says, I've got my account, a Gmail account. I've got lots of data there. How can I store that?
Well, my advice is there is an option in, all of these email providers to back it up and to save it as a file. And like we mentioned, put that into a memory stick or a hard drive and do that every day. At the end of the day, it probably takes 5 minutes. Back up your emails, back up your data, back up your work files, back up your pictures, put it in a safe or put it somewhere where it's not connected to the internet. That is the best way you're going to keep your data secure.
Asela Waidyalankara, you've been an absolute wonder here, and we've had many messages here thanking us for bringing you on the program. So thank you for being so informative and so professional about all this.
Thank you for having me, Faraz. It's always a pleasure.
It's a great pleasure to have had you. And that's it from Newsline on the 17th of May, 2017. Take care and God bless.